Hey everyone, welcome back to Unfoolish Investing, where we break down the world of finance in ways that make sense without the nonsense. I'm one of your hosts, Victor,
I'm Larry.
and today we're talking about the big news. You know what I'm talking about, Larry? The Federal Reserve. After 4 long years, not one, not even three, 4 long years of people talking about we're going to have a recession. They're going to cut rates. They didn't do it. They finally made a major move in cutting the interest rate by what, half a point. What does this mean for you, the markets, and the economy? Let's dive into it, Larry.
I mean, finally, to your point, it's been I think it was early 2020 they started cutting rates. So it's like 4.5 years almost um, since the last cut. All you know, I don't want to go too much into your lane, Victor, but all the media the last few years of we're doomed, dump everything, it's all going to hell. It seems like the Fed's pulled off this soft landing. We'll see as the rest of the year goes on. If they keep cutting, I personally think they're going to cut another 0.5%, whether that's all at once or in 2 quarter point blocks. But, hopefully this opens up some housing inventory. People that feel like they're kind of trapped because they can't sell because they've got super low, COVID or pre-COVID interest rates, 2-3%, to get some of those houses on the market, because as we talked about in a prior episode, they just can't build houses fast enough. So, a little plug there for the home builders and the homes ETF. But as much as people kind of Monday morning quarterback Jay Powell, I think we've gotten to the right spot. Whether or not you agree with how we got here, we're in a great position now.
Yeah, I think the Fed likely made this move to give the economy just a little bit of a boost before things continue to slow down too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like a preemptive strike, just trying to ensure that the economic growth stays strong, which it
Yeah.
continues to do. Now, how do you think this affects the stock market and here we are where we are right now?
Well, see, I'm kind of stunned by some of the stuff I've read since the cut announcement today, because personally, I think they should have cut 1/4 point last month, when they revised down the job numbers, and, the job market was kind of decelerating faster than they were expecting. So I was hoping that they cut 1/4 point last month instead of having to do a 0.5 point this month. But it seems like it's been months of people in the stock market, all the analysts and everything, saying, gotta cut rates, gotta cut rates, gotta cut rates. And then the Fed kind of owns up to it and makes kind of a heavy move and says, we're going to cut a 0.5 point. And then the stock market goes down, because now all the analysts are saying, well, they cut by a 0.5 point. What do they know that we don't? After they've been calling for a 0.5 point rate cut for 4, 5, 6 months.
Oh, the media. The
It's
media, you
unbelievable.
gotta love them.
It's unbelievable.
We need a half point cut. We're giving you that half point cut. Oh my God, why did you cut
Yep.
my
Overreaction. Yeah.
what now? As an unfoolish investing, I think we need to break it down to the everyday level, right? Now, what does this half point cut mean for you, the unfoolish investor at home? If you have debt, for instance, whether it's mortgage, student loan, or even credit card, you might see your interest rates start going down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great if you have debt. On the flip side, if you have money in the bank, in savings accounts, or if you're investing in treasuries, you're not going to get as much interest on that as you have been for the past several years.
But to your earlier point, if you're looking at making a big purchase, whether or
Mhm.
not it's a car or even some real estate, you're going to get lower borrowing rates. So I feel like these industries, which you've seen over the last couple of quarters, have run into some pitfalls, whether or not it's through the tariffs on steel. They might start to see a nice little bump in profitability because now instead
Yep.
of someone buying a new car at 4 or 5%, they might be able to start offering that 1 to 2% interest rate, and get people
Mhm.
back in the door.
Yeah, I want to see what it does to the housing market. I'm hoping that it gets some people to, kind of break that barrier. Like, oh, I can't move because my interest rate is so low in my current house, even though they might have the means to move. They just don't feel like they want to spend 5.5%, 6% on a mortgage. Um, so I'm hoping that some inventory frees up. I love the half point cut by the Fed. I think it's a decisive move. And I think they had to, because the job market was deteriorating faster than they were expecting last month, and it's continued into this month. So they had to do something.
Agreed, agreed. And I just want to remind everybody at home, investing is a long game, not a short-term game. So
Mm-hmm.
even with this half, percent cut, don't make any quick moves based on the rate cut alone.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to your set strategy of set it and forget it investing. Think you said it a few minutes ago. This likely isn't the last rate cut of the year. So that's why I'm like, don't make any moves. Like if you were thinking about making a big purchase, maybe you just pause a couple of months. You might be able to get a little bit better of a rate because they're not going to raise it. It's not going back
Right.
up anytime soon. So no one should have that fear of the Fed raising the rate in another
Right.
month or two. They're only either going to stay the course or give it a slight cut. Keep
Yeah.
your head cool. Keep your head cool, unfoolish investor.
Yeah, if you've waited this long, if you've been able to wait this long on buying, a big purchase, keep waiting. It's only going to benefit you. Waiting is only going to benefit you, like you said, Victor.
And on that, let me just jump on in to today's episode, everyone. And that is episode 11. Any guesses?
I'm going to guess Palantir.
Palantir. That's right. Welcome to episode 11. Finally, we're talking about Palantir Technologies. You know, Palantir is a story shaped by its co-founders. And I'm not sure if everybody's out there aware of, but Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. Thiel is the Silicon Valley giant and an early Facebook investor. And Karp, which kills me, is a philosopher turned CEO. A philosopher turned CEO. They built Palantir on the idea of using data to tackle society's biggest problems. And I got to tell you, Larry, society definitely could use some data solving by Palantir. The company thrives on government contracts, which I think we'll discuss a little bit later, but faces stiff competition in the data analytics space. We'll also explore some of Palantir's biggest competitors and how they stack up. Larry, what do you think about Palantir?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on the data-driven solutions. Like, we need help. You know, I don't really have anything to add on the executives. I think you named them quite well. It's a stock I've been looking at for years, and unfortunately for me, I mean, we'll probably go into it later, have never bought it. So I don't own it right now.
Are you
Um,
familiar with what their flagship products are?
I am. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they do have three products: Gotham, Foundry, and Apollo. Is that right?
Yes, in Gotham
Okay.
and Foundry, I would say are there two core
Hmm.
products that help governments and corporations make sense of massive data sets.
Okay.
I think to me that's the bread and butter is their government contracts,
Yeah.
particularly U.S. Department of Defense. So those DoD contracts
Mhm.
are keeping them cruising even in potential downtimes. So if anybody ever gets concerned, Palantir is probably going to continue to see that DoD money filter in, and because that relationship that I've always found, and we've used this term in the past, sticky. Like once you're in
Yeah.
the DoD, they tend to re-up on a lot of those contracts because getting into the DoD is the toughest part. But once you're in,
Yeah, it's very hard to have the government shift away from some vendor for whatever service that is.
now one of the main reasons I wanted to do this podcast today around Palantir is they are now officially getting ready to go into the S&P 500. And I feel like this is a significant achievement for any company. Um, but more importantly, it means that Palantir is now going to be included in those index funds, one of those two index funds in our core
Mm-hmm.
investing strategy. Palantir will now be one of the stocks that you will purchase every time you drip into that. Um,
Yep.
and the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that historically, if you want to see right now, stocks that end up going into the S&P 500 index, as you kind of see from the news breaks over the last month, they've gone up roughly 10%. I like
Yeah.
to tell people, do not buy because they're going into the S&P 500. It's the worst time to buy because
Mm-hmm.
of that bump is already done. What you typically see, and if you go back through some of the other stocks that have recently been included, um, it tends to level out. So
Yeah.
you're more than likely to see Palantir in the 25 to 28 range within those 100 days than you are to see them go into the 40s or the 50s. Do you buy now? Or, as I said, wait.
I say wait. I don't feel the need to rush in and buy, especially if it's getting added to the S&P because I already own the S&P. So once it's in the S&P, I'll automatically own it because the funds are going to have to rebalance to buy add Palantir anyway. Which is I think why they level off a bit to your point, because they rally on the like excitement of they're going to go in the S&P and they're like pre-pricing in the the growth that's going to come from all those buys to go into the index. Um, and then you on the flip side, you have people that might see this as I've already held Palantir for 5 years. I don't want to hold it anymore, so I'm going to sell it off as it goes into the S&P.
Yeah, and I think that like when you look at the inclusion and being able to buy in the index funds, that's critical. But one
Mm-hmm.
reason why I haven't bought in Palantir yet is because of the sector it's in has
Mm-hmm.
it has so many different platforms that you can choose from. And this is where I kind of like look at this um, you know, pie approach or basket, I've heard it called in the past, because I have owned, and I think you might have as well, one of its competitors. That's right, Snowflake. And for anybody that's not aware of Snowflake, they're a cloud based data warehousing company that allows businesses to store and analyze what? Large data sets in a highly flexible and scalable way. Very similar, if not identical, to what Palantir is doing. Only Snowflake isn't as reliant on those government contracts. Snowflake is much stronger, I find, in commercial markets because they're able to provide infrastructure that I find that many businesses rely on to manage their data. So if you think of like a Fortune 500 company um, needing to get software to crunch their large data sets, you know, whether or
Uh-huh.
not it's that company with that CEO that should be fired, CVS, um, you know, they're more than likely using Snowflake as one of their options. And, Palantir, on the other hand, offers data analytics, um, that focus a little bit more on interpreting and how to leverage data. But again, more towards government in defense cases.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Snowflake?
Yeah. I've owned Snowflake since shortly after they IPO'd, and it's something that I've dripped into pretty consistently since. Unfortunately, if you look at the two stock charts, it's two different directions. Snowflake in 5 years is down by 40 something percent. And I think in 5 years, Palantir is up almost 300%. So, unfortunately, it looks like, at least in the past 5 years, I've kind of bet on the wrong horse. If I could do it over, I would have put all that money in Palantir. But that's a lesson to stay diversified. To your point about baskets, maybe not just own one company in a certain space. You want to own multiple companies in a particular space.
Yeah, and in fairness, in the 5 year trend, neither Palantir or Snowflake have been um, public for 5 years, but they've been
Yeah.
out similar time span. But if you kind of look at it, the last 5 years, we're looking at about 295% for Palantir. But if you just look at this last year, if you gone in within the last year, you're looking at just 135%
Hmm.
of that 200, of that almost 300% just in the last year, which really tells you how well they're doing. And their year to date, 120%. So just if you drop
Yeah.
back to January
Skyrocketing.
2nd, you buy in January, you're looking like a genius. You're
Yep.
looking like a genius. But again, it's one of those stocks that you know I've continued to watch, but like you said, year to date, Snowflake, complete opposite story. Is it going to stay that way? Um, Part of me says no. I'd like to think that and this is the benefit of like a basket approach when you're looking at going into a sector instead of betting on one
Yeah.
horse. Maybe you break that into Snowflake. Maybe you buy some Palantir. And maybe what else do you buy, Larry? A stock I sold earlier this year that I still continue to watch because of the AI boom. I was like, I'm getting out. I will watch this and I'll potentially get back in. And that's C3 AI.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know you owned it. Well,
and the only reason I got out was as it was going through the roof due to the AI boom. I was reading that this is the third time they've rebranded the company. And I was just like, it kind of made me pause for a second because in all my research of going in, I'm like, I never saw that before. And then I'm like, let me do a little bit more digging. And I'm like, you know what? I think the AI hype is there. I'm gonna sell right now. I'm gonna take a little profits and I'm
hmm.
going to continue to watch this AI sector. But C3 AI offers AI based enterprise software solutions. Um, they're focused on predictive analytics and Internet of Things. And similar to Palantir, it has a strong government connection, including
Yep.
deals with the U.S. Air Force and the DoD. Um, Compared to Palantir, C3 AI is much heavier on the AI and predictive analytics for industrial clients, whereas Palantir I find is more focused on data analysis and decision making. Um, you
Mhm.
know, have you ever looked into C3 AI?
Yeah, I actually own some. It's pretty flat from where I bought it. I don't think I've owned it too long, maybe a little over a year. But it was just a one-time thing. I haven't added to it since. I haven't sold any either. I kind of bought it in the AI like momentum cycle, if you will. Um, and it's just something I'm probably just going to hold on to for years and see where it goes. It's not a sizable piece of my portfolio at all.
Yeah, for me, I got out in the low 30s,
Mm.
and I was like, you know what? I wrote, but in fairness, I did write it up um, from what was it? I think it was the low 20s. I think it might have even been low, but yeah, I think it was. Yeah, right around there, somewhere between $15 and $18. It went
Mm.
up. I got out, but I was like, I wanted AI exposure, and then I just like this whole AI thing is just through the roof, out of control. Um, you know,
Yeah.
now the fourth, the next company I want to discuss again, um, you know, they were purchased. They were purchased, and I think they were purchased for a reason because I personally thought that their data analysis tool was phenomenal, and I loved it, especially from the IT side, and that is Splunk. Yeah, for me, Splunk analysis, and again, particularly in IT operations and cybersecurity, which is my wheelhouse, right? They were able to give me machine data around pretty much every flaw on every system and where to patch and how to get to it across my entire network. They took that heavy lifting out of all this data that I had, and they were able to streamline it for me. They were able to tell me how to patch it, where to go, and what to do.
Wow.
And for me, it was like, okay, so I need this patch, I need to go up here, and I need to get it in. And for me, that was where I was like, Splunk is phenomenal. They are absolute bomb for data analysis. But again, in the IT and cybersecurity field, I mean, in a large corporation, like to me, is it was like the bread and butter. And I feel like their real time operational intelligence is second to none. I I feel that Palantir is again more about deep data analysis.
Hmm.
And again, if you hear their philosopher, co-founder, he's very big on talking about the long-term strategic decisions that Palantir will help save the world, solve
Hmm.
the world's problems through data analysis. It's very, it's amazing to listen to him talk. And if you have Max or YouTube, he was on this previous week's episode of Bill Maher and just talking to it. And I've never seen him out in public. So for me, I was like, whoa, this guy really exists. Because, he's not like Peter Thiel
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, any thoughts on Splunk before I jump in?
Yeah, not really. I don't really know much about them. It was interesting listening to your rundown because I'd
Yeah.
heard of them, but I haven't really looked into them at all.
Yeah, and I feel like the main reason I included them into the list was one, you know, they were acquired, um,
Mhm.
and two, you know, the cybersecurity IT standpoint, and just I didn't even mention they were acquired by Cisco, so
Oh,
you
okay.
know
Yep.
it just gives Cisco another notch on their belt. So
Hmm.
for me, again, for IT and data security, um, Splunk is the place to go. So the big question, after reviewing all our companies, so if you wanted to get into the, you know, stock space, you could, buy Cisco stock and you get a little Splunk in there. The big question, should we be buying Palantir now or wait for the hype to cool down?
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna buy any. I'm gonna let it get added to the S&P, and I'll automatically own some, um, just by holding S&P 500 index funds (VOO). I wouldn't rush to buy it. If you already own VOO, you're gonna own it anyway. And maybe it cools down in the next 6 months, 12 months, um, and you can get in at a better.
I'd agree. I'd agree. I'm treating it like I do a stock that goes public, where I typically, no matter how much I want to get in and
Mm,
how much I may miss out,
yeah,
I have to wait that 6 months. I have to wait a couple of quarters, see how things are going.
yeah.
And
Like we talked about with Starbucks.
yes, yes, exactly. It's like that same mentality that I'm taking with Starbucks and its new CEO. I'm taking with Palantir. I'm more serious about buying Palantir right now. So I can add it into my Snowflake and start building out a little bit broader basket. But to your
Mm,
point, I own VOO. I continue to drip into VOO on a
yeah,
regular basis. So I'm going to be buying a little bit of Palantir with each purchase of VOO. So, I kind of look at it like that.
yeah. One thing I wanted to mention about the S&P 500. So Palantir is going to go in starting on the 23rd. So today's the 18th. So 23rd of September, next Monday. Dell is also getting added effective Monday. And American Airlines and Etsy will be being removed.
Etsy, there was a darling of the pandemic right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's sad to see them go down. Hopefully, they can earn their spot back in, because I do love that company for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree they need to make a couple of shifts in there and kind of change things up.
Yeah.
I, so let's hope for the best from Etsy. But yeah, Dell, you said Dell's going in too.
Yes. Yep.
Back
As of
in,
the September 20th.
back in, which is
Yep.
you know again another stock. If you own VOO, you'll be able to buy a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah. You and I have talked about Dell, over the last like 6 months or so. So nice to see them getting added.
Yeah, I think my big thing with Dell has always been I felt like the stock was kind of beaten down based on where it is,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are playing AI around um, GPUs with NVIDIA or even
Yep.
AMD, Intel, ARM, you name it. They're going Taiwan Semiconductor. I can just continue to ramble on around that. But if you're looking for server room build outs, data center build outs, um,
Yeah.
Dell has a huge enterprise footprint and they continue to grow in that sector. And I think that they're a company that is definitely undervalued, especially as the build out in the AI world continues to grow.
Agreed.
Awesome. You know, I find that, in closing, whether or not you want to look at Snowflake, C3 AI, Cisco in order to get a little action with Splunk, or just Palantir, um, you know, watch, don't just rush in. The rate cut came. We're not sure what's going to come next. My guess, another small one. Um, but you're diving into Palantir now with all your eyes on its different competitors, and you have a full picture that of how to put together a basket. I feel like will be more beneficial in the long term. So, with that, make sure you hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the stock market. And until next time, stay unfoolish, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.